Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pucking Mad podcast. Today, I'm joined by Martin Grubb, head coach of the Solway Sharks and GB under-20s. Martin, thank you so much for coming on the pod. I really appreciate it. Would you like to introduce yourself better than I could, I think?
Yeah, no, I think you've said it. It's a pleasure to be here, Michael. And as you say, I'm Martin Grubb, head coach of Solway Sharks. Take care of everything from senior side all the way down to the Learn to Play programme. Also, head coach currently of the Great Britain under-20s team, and a busy man. So, yeah, no, it's nice to be here on a Friday morning and have a chat with you.
Great, thank you very much. That's brilliant. Let's start with Solway, because I think that's probably the one that fills most of your time, I'd imagine. It's been, from an outsider's point of view, one hell of a season. How has it been for you so far? How's it been going?
Yeah, it's been good. Obviously, we're kind of approaching the business end of the season now, so it's been good to date. Nothing's been decided yet, so we're like every team. You set out at the beginning of the season. You recruit your players. You have the aspiration of winning and competing for trophies. We've managed again this season on the back of a very successful treble winning season last year to do that. But as I've just said, nothing's been decided yet. So we're in a good spell. We're in a good place. We're in kind of control of our own destiny, if you like, where we know what we got to do to get our hands on the silverware. But it won't be a fulfilling and kind of great season unless we do manage to do that. And obviously, right now we got a very good Billingham Stars team in our way in a cup final, which is already be next week, and then we've got to get over the line in the league. Everybody will be gunning for us then in the playoffs, and then hopefully you get over the line, you get that national championship, which looks like a rematch against Streatham, which I think everybody would be looking forward to as well. So we've got to be happy in where we are right now. But obviously, probably like most successful teams, you're not totally happy until you get it over the line.
Yeah, I can see that, to be completely honest, and it's amazing when you speak to the players, and it's I'll jump to this question too because it seems to link in that there's a lot of I've spoken to a few Solway players now, and from Struan, kind of the old head in the team, I suppose, down to the young players, there's a real kind of modesty about what's being done at Solway and the way they're playing and things. How have you managed to do that? How have you managed to keep the players, particularly the young players who might get a bit excited and a bit giddy, I suppose? How have you managed to keep their skates on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I think our recruitment model has always been people first. We make sure we bring good people in, whether they're existing, players that you're extending a contract or a option on, to bring in the new guys in. We need to have good people. You need to have a good locker room. You need to have guys that will buy into what the club want and the visions of the club, and the community feel and fan base is great here. So they need to buy into that. And they also, I mean, you kind of got to look them in the eye, and they got to want to win. We're really lucky when you mentioned Struan. We've got Ross Murray. We've got guys like Gordon Horn. I mean, and crazily, you look at even Callum Hepburn, Stuart Kerr. I mean, they're only 25 years old, but they're like that veteran core that they've been with me a long time. They've been with the club. It means a lot to them, and they really push the players themselves into understanding what our club's all about, understanding what our mentality is all about, understanding what the style of play is when you come to Solway Sharks, and knowing that we want to compete. We want to be in the hunt for trophies, and anything else is kind of unacceptable because it aids the development of the full club. So I've got to credit the players. They really buy in. Of course, like every team, there's ups and downs, but I guess that's when Jamie Thompson and myself come into as coaches. That's when we've got to do our work. And I guess it's a consistent approach. They know right from the beginning what we expect. Some nights when it's maybe not going our way, there's just a honest chat about the standards we set, and they deserve all the credit because they buy into it. They go out and put their bodies on the line week in, week out, and so far they've been very successful.
Yeah, it's really cool when you see that. I mean, I think the last game you lost, and I said this with Stu, and I apologize if I don't want to jinx anything, but it was like, I think it was in October against Whitley Warriors away, which is an insanely hard place to go and get a win anyway. But like, I think it's amazing when you see that length of time where not only like I think it looks as though the Solway team is able to adapt and kind of take control of pretty much every game it plays. It might be a battle, but the adapting seems to be important. Is that quite true? Would you say that there's an adaptation with the players in each
Yeah,
game, or is it quite play it in one way?
yeah, no, I think it's one of these old cliches, but the players understand we take it game by game. We do we do look at a little pre-scout, so we know our opposition. We try and see what their kind of tendencies and habits will be. We stick predominantly to our own structure, and we've got a way of playing, but the players are very flexible. They know that if we need to make changes during the game, and any adjustments, they do that, and we do that as a coaching staff. And I don't think you can just go out and expect to play the same way with the same result every week. You do have to make adjustments. You do have to give, I think the league in the north maybe doesn't get the credit it deserves at times because, like you say, Whitley away. I mean, Whitley at any time, but Whitley away is a very difficult build. And Billingham deserve massive credit. What Stephen Foster and Rob Wilkinson are starting to build there. We lost there this year. So they're full of confidence right now. Solihull away, especially is a difficult place. Deeside are now really playing well now they've got the ice rink back. Blackburn are building. I mean, there's not a team I don't think if you switch off. I think that's been our mentality. If you switch off in this league, you will get punished. And we try to be. I've always spoke to the players about the most consistent team normally wins the league. And if you could find that consistency and be ready to adjust and be ready to adapt, then we're going to be successful. And I'll keep harping back to it because they're the ones that play, but the players are the ones that deserve the credit. We set the stall out and we make, as you say, the adjustments if needed, but they execute and they go play. And one of the key things is, we tend to go and enjoy playing hockey because you don't play forever. You've got to enjoy it. And if you're enjoying it, I always think you work that little bit harder, you play that little bit better, and normally success comes from that. So that's kind of the philosophy that's allowed us to adapt to whatever comes our way, take it game by game, and just make sure there's no regrets come the end of the year.
Yeah, that's it's interesting that you say about the league in the north. I think you're completely right. Particularly over the last few seasons, the standard seems to be really jumping, and the style is really kind of expanding and getting quite interesting. I think it's probably the same for hockey in the UK in general, I would argue anyway. But like, it's so important to see that, like you say with Billingham. I lived up near Billingham for 2 seasons. I've recently left, and it's amazing the jump from Billingham were relying couple of seasons to 2 seasons ago on just having Chris Sykes, tear through the middle of the ice, which is, I mean, Chris Sykes is Chris Sykes. He's very good at that, but like, you need more. And now they're so developed. It's amazing. The speed of development is really important.
Yeah, they've done a good job there.
Yeah. And what about with obviously homegrown players? I think Solway has one import player, and while I understand maybe imports aren't as important at this level, but would you say that sort of preference for homegrown kind of players has been an important policy, and what benefits have come from that, if so?
It's definitely important. I think the biggest key for us is we want to make sure that when a kid turns up to try ice hockey for the first time, they know that there is a definitive pathway from the first steps onto the ice right into that senior team. We use a lot of the players throughout our junior program, and they happily jump on the ice and they help the kids, and they're visual so that we can build a rapport there. And I think that any club's job is to make sure that they have almost a conveyor belt of young talent that are able to step up and ideally throughout the years look 4, 5, 6, maybe even 10 years ahead to say, these are potential players that can make a jump to senior hockey. This is going to be our future. And, I think that our job, the way we look at it in our club, and Struan and Ross Murray, Richard Bentham, even our import, Peter Gappad, he bought in straight away to the community, to the club. He jumps on the ice with the kids, and they all know him. They get that they're trying to almost mould their replacements longer term. We have a prospects program right now where there's some kids that have been skating with us for the whole season that they're developing in their junior hockey, but they're already getting a taste of what it takes, because long term our job's to try and get these players to the highest level they can play at. Obviously, you look at the most recent examples, Liam Stenton, where he's obviously now signed a professional contract in the Elite League with Glasgow. We've got Scott Henderson now, Liam Danskin, Kel Beattie, Finn Page just came in. That list of two-way guys that ideally we would love to help become professional full time, and when they go, we'll replace them. With our young players. People talk about a rebuild. Like in some clubs have said, we're at the end of our cycle, we're going to have to rebuild. My opinion and our club's opinion is if you can have that as a long-term plan, you don't ever need a full rebuild. You can just replace. And obviously at the moment, we've also had that little agreement with Edinburgh and the SNL. My old friend Stephen Lynch has taken a couple of our guys, and Kyle Carruth and Cian Shevlin, and given them experience. So it's about having that plan, giving them the platform to play, making sure they get the experience. Don't throw them in too early. If they're not ready, just help them to be ready and reach their potential. And that has to be the key for us as a club. I think that the country as a whole should be responsible for that kind of development plan of bring your young players in, give them a pathway to the top of your club and beyond. And I think it will bear fruit for everybody, and it certainly works for us as a club at Solway, and our junior coaches, our senior coaches, our committees, our volunteers. Everybody buys into that, and long may that continue for us, because we're getting a lot of young talent.
Definitely. I last season I came up for but you had a game against Nottingham, I think it was. I'm probably wrong there. But what shocked me the most about Solway was the size of the team in terms of fan base, following, the style of play, everything. It seems to be much bigger. No disrespect to any team in the league that that you're playing in. The hockey's great, the fan bases are great, but Solway, that you can really feel that the community's bought in Dumfries. People want to come and see it, and it seems to be really important to the community, and that probably does make a huge difference in terms of attracting youngsters to come and play, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's a two-way street where it's important to the club and the players. And there's been a few games this year we've used that example of we've maybe not been playing as maybe as well or as free flowing as we'd like. And we say that to the players, where we have a responsibility to entertain our fan base. They come, they pay their hard-earned money, they support us magnificently, that they buy into everything that we try to do. So we've got to, as a minimum, we've got to work hard and entertain them. But the interaction, after games in the bar and these kind of things are all important. If, like a couple of weeks ago, we had a slightly further out of the actual town, but in the region, we had a Cub Scout group come in and on the ice with the players at the end, and photographs. And I know obviously we're not the only team; we're not unique to doing any of this. But you're right; it has to be a little bit bigger than just ice hockey. It has to be a community type feel. It has to be something that everybody buys into. And it has to be a fun environment. I just think that any line of work, especially in a hobby, if you sign up to do something, you're not going to do it if it's not fun. So we try and create that whole feel about the place, and as I say, people buy in, especially the players, and it's something we're constantly looking at, just review constantly, try and make better. I think we're trying to be as professional as we can, both on and off the ice, and look after people. Once they're part of this club, they'll always have a little link to us, whether they stay here short or long term. And I think that also is important, the people aspect. And
yeah,
it's We kind of going back to it's worked for us to this date, and hopefully it continues.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's really cool. There's definitely a family feel about on every level, from the players, from from to you, then to the fans. It's amazing. What about obviously Solway's long-term projection? It's a controversial topic, this, and I know there's parts of it that we don't you might not want to discuss because there's a lot of politics in ice hockey that doesn't involve ice. So where do you see Solway's future? You've been here a while now. You've kind of built this. I think you've built this kind of quite incredibly stable team. Where do you see the future for Solway?
I guess it's one that I can't answer, because as a club, we want to continue to grow. We want to give our players, especially the young guys coming through, we want to give them the opportunity to play at the highest level possible. We'd love that highest level possible to be in Solway or as part of a two-way deal with a higher club, and for us to go up to, I mean, obviously, like you kind of allude to, the rumours are there, the chats out there, the National League kind of elephant in the room scenario, but we're ready to talk. I think that's the thing. We're ready to talk. We're ready to see what happens. But ultimately, I think it's kind of out with our hands, because that's a very good and stable league at the moment. I think that league will continue to grow. There's a lot of good work getting done there. But, we won't kid ourselves. It's predominantly, it's an English league right now. And obviously we're over the border, albeit just, we're over the border. It would be a lot of travel. We're used to that travel, because when we joined the NIHL or the EIHA kind of family, if you like, we were under no illusions that every Sunday we have to get on a bus. We got to travel, and we're okay with that. The players are okay with that. They understand. The club are okay with that. They understand the finances of things. You look at the cup final, to make it work with ourselves in Billingham, we had to play on a Friday night. Our facility and our support from them are absolutely great with that. They're happy. So I think as an infrastructure, both playing and the way we try and run our club, we would love to discuss at least potentially going up a level, or is there a conference system, longer term. There's chat on kind of your Fifes and Dundees, and Manchester for a few years has been the rumours of what do they do with the smaller budget elite league teams. Is there a conference system somewhere that makes a proper national league? Who knows what Edinburgh's longer plans are? Are they in the mix? Personally, I'd love British hockey to go back to an almost that second tier anyway, to be in a proper national setup. The elite league is the elite league. It's an entertainment league. It's growing. It's the quality in that league is, some of the players are exceptional. I mean, and the coaching and everything there. But as a British coach in charge of a club of British players, we'd love to test ourselves at that next level. Now, we're under no illusion that may then change from winning. I guess we're winning as it is at the moment, to then having to scrap for potential playoff spots, etc. But I guess we'll never know. We'll never know until that official conversation round the table, whatever it may be, comes to us. It's flattering, if I'm honest, that we're being put in that mix. It tells you that we're doing the right things. It's credit to the club and the people that run it, and obviously the players themselves that were at least being discussed in there. But I guess it's a watch the space. Never say never for us. We'll continue to grow the game either way. We'll continue to represent our league as best as we can, whether we're competing against our teams or we're going to a national final like we did last year. We'll continue to represent the North and even Scotland as best as we can. And if it grows bigger than that, then I say we'll welcome the chat. If it doesn't, then we'll continue doing our thing and give young players a place to play at the best level they can.
Yeah, I can completely get that, and I will. I'm going to make a comment here, which is my own comment, and I will remove it if you would like me to. And that is that I can't see how the National League doesn't contain a team from Scotland. I cannot fathom it. I think I understand the controversy for the existing teams, who they probably concerned about the travel, the financial implications. But I think for British hockey, if it's to develop, we need to be encouraging a fully national to a kind of top league that isn't the elite league, obviously. It's a very important thing for hockey. But I think if it doesn't change, Solway will end up forcing a change in some way, because the standard is, it's really increasing, and it's quite a great thing. It's a great thing for British hockey in general.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think, again, you put both a Solway, but you put a Great Britain hat on, and you look and you say, I think Leeds is the furthest north at the moment, and it's more about the players. Any young player there's Blackburn, Billingham, Whitley, ourselves, in that North League alone before you step into the SNL. These players need somewhere to play a little bit higher, in my opinion. But again, that's my opinion, and I think we've all got it, and everybody in the country is going to have one and be entitled to it. But I'd love to see, longer term. The key would have to be, regardless, for every club, has to be long term, but it's got to be sustainable, and it's got to have the players and the sport's long term development at heart. And if we can get that right within however many years, then the sport in the country will be a better place for it.
Definitely, yeah. We're at an interesting point with British hockey, because it is really developing, I think, very quickly. Into like the popularity seems to be increasing and things like that too, which is really, really cool. If we could have a talk about the youth setup at Solway, we touched on it very briefly when we're talking about kind of the direction of Solway. It seems to be a very important thing. Could you shed some light on the talent that's coming through, and how important that is to Solway within the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the keys for our youth setup is that it's all joined up. It's joined up from, as they learn to play. The first time they step on the ice right now, one of the first faces they see is Struntona, the captain of the Solway Sharks. The guy that, rightly so, was getting every credit for his 400th game for the club. So they kind of see that face. They see what the top end and the success looks like. And then we've got a great core of volunteer coaches. We've got a great core of volunteers that run that junior club and junior committee. And we're now in the process of making a little adjustment now to almost having our own coach and coach mentor program, which I'll start to run. Hopefully we'll roll that out before the end of the season. And then some of the ex-players have come back to coach. So the pathway in the club and the support from the facility helps us do what we need to do. But ultimately, it still comes down to we see every kid that comes in as potential. They've all got their own different rate of learning. They've all got their own different skill set. And if we can enhance that so that they can be the best they can be, then there'll be an opportunity for them to continue to play the game at whatever level suits them and is highest to them. When they get to under 16 right now, then Ross Murray is coaching there. Obviously, Ross is apart for that 1 year, and Whitley has played most of his senior career for me, so it's an extension almost of what we're teaching in the senior team. Goes down to 16s, and he does 19s as well. So they're getting an insight into what it takes to become a senior Solway Shark. Similar structure and systems and the practices. But we also have I guess you call it a prospects program, where right now, where Kyle Carruth came through, Liam Stenton, Lewis Houston, people before that all kind of came through that, and they train before they're able to play. They train with the senior team right now. Bailey Thompson, Owen Ray, Logan Reed, Thomas Verostek, and Ewan Dugnan are the kids in kind of possession of that prospect role. So there's straight away, there's a line already of guys turning 16 in the summer that's probably keep your eye on and see how quickly we can get them into the senior program. And we'll piece them in when they turn 16. It's probably going to be next year now, but we start piecing them in to the senior team to show the next kind of rung of the ladder underneath that they can be that guy, and we'll replace them in a prospects program. So it's a kind of long-term revolving door where we lose guys. We know we're going to lose guys at the top end through age, or hopefully we lose guys in a good way to higher levels, and we try and replace first and foremost from within, and make sure that the kids know that there's an opportunity for growth, there's an opportunity for development. But further from that, there's also within our club, and within our ice rink, there's an opportunity to continue just to play the game if you love it. And a couple of recreational teams there will also be part of the pathway that if serious kind of hockey is not for them, then we'd still love them to be playing or to be coaching, or if we need to push them towards officiating, it's got to be a long-term plan. And as I say, with the facility support plus the clubs themselves, everybody works together to just try and make sure that we have a constant amount of young talent coming through. And senior team plays a huge part in that. Our coaching, as I say, plays a huge part in that. And then the parents and the kids themselves buy into it, see that it's a possibility, and want to be in the senior team. And let's say that the kind of 5 guys I name checked there is they're the next 4 or 5 in possession. Let's watch the space, and we'll continue to just keep them coming, hopefully.
Yeah, it's great. And obviously Solway are always pushing to win every game. I suppose that's maybe the expectation is, like, be competitive and win as many games as possible. Is there a challenge when it comes to incorporating these players? Because I imagine if you're wanting to kind of be competitive in every game, how difficult is it to slot these players in to give them that experience?
If I'm honest, I don't think it's difficult at all, because you've just got to be honest with people and have that communication of there will be some games that they can't probably get into. The difficult games, the ones we discussed kind of earlier, I suppose, your Whitleys, your Billinghams at the moment, becomes pretty tough, especially some of the away games, to get them into these games. And the last thing you want to do is take a young kid and put them in an environment that's either unsafe or is just going to knock their confidence. So we'll look at some games and kind of earmark the games against. I mean, if you look at somebody like Nottingham, not even on the strength of results, but they're a young team themselves. I mean, Matt is obviously building constantly with a young team there, so I know that we can throw them into some of these games because of the style of hockey, because of the kind of size and the ability of teams. But also, I think that we've preached for years that the hardest work that we do has to be in practice, so that almost our hardest opponents ourselves. And these young players now know that if they can compete on a practice night where older players or established players, if you like, then they'll be okay when they get thrown in. And the credit you give our group is that they embrace the young players. They treat them, they almost mentor them to an extent, but then they don't treat them any different to the rest of the team. They expect high standards, which the young player quickly enjoys, because they know they're being cared for, they know they're being pushed, and they know there's an opportunity in it. And if they deserve to play a bit more than an older guy or a guy that's in possession of a jersey, I always say that to them: pick a couple of guys, pick a guy ahead of you, and see if you can take his spot. And if they can do that, it creates a compete level within our own group. But there's always, I think that's it. Like, there's always ways you can get them in. Some games are easier than others, but there's always ways you can get them in. And more importantly, and I say it for the bottom level up, players don't sign up to train to be a hockey player. They sign up to play. So you have to get them into games to see if they can play. And if they can play and you know that they're capable, you give them some more. Obviously, some of them will step in, and it may just be a little bit too much for them. So you look at other options, such as our two-way program and stuff with other teams, and get them the experience. But it's fun also trying to get them in and trying to get and seeing their faces when, I mean, we had Kyle Carruth this year. I think it was actually his first game, and gets his first senior goal, and his family's got a long tradition with the club. So seeing his face, seeing the family's face, seeing the fan base's face, it makes it fun and challenging to get them in, but they reap the rewards. So it's it just all slots into the plan. And the more that we can try and fit them into these games and get game time, then the more beneficial it becomes to everybody longer term.
Perfect. If we could continue talking about the kind of the young players, but move on to GB under-20s. I think it's quite an exciting prospect for the country, really, when you have kind of this sort of like success. I think that's kind of been taking place with GB at a youth level. How do you manage both roles? Because I imagine it takes up a lot of your time. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's obviously I'm really lucky that the employment here is, a full-time job is with the council within ice hockey itself. So the discussions took place many moons ago when I got involved in the GB program, and they thankfully allow me that time to do both roles. They know that there's a benefit to the sport in general. Obviously, you need a supportive family. My wife and kids have given me the support and want that me to do well and see that happening. So you need that first and foremost. But it's difficult not to then and not want to do that, because you're working with the best under-20 players in the country. You when you get to see what's coming through, you get to have an opportunity to shape some of their futures. Hopefully, I mean, we stand up, with the coaching staff. I'm lucky enough to have Dale Keane and Danny Myers with me. Had some really good coaches with me in the past, but it's similar. We stand up and we tell them that, of course, you want that short-term success and to create long-term memories and with that age group. But our job really, again, is to also try and help them become professional ice hockey players if they're not already in a team there, and ideally become a senior men's player at some point in the future. I mean, that's the 18s are doing that for the 20s, and the 20s have to do that for the men if we can. So combining the jobs is, I suppose, it's the same sport. It's hockey, I guess. Some of it can overlap. Some of the stuff we do here in Solway will mirror some of the GB stuff, and some of the stuff we do in international competition, I learn from, and it probably makes the club here better. For me, continual learning, but it's a lot of it will be, there's a lot of phone calls, there's a lot of time on the phone, there's a lot of time on kind of sitting in front of your computer screen. But it's enjoyable. That's I guess the biggest thing. You make it work because it's enjoyable. You do have obviously time away for family and World Championships, especially. It's now 2 weeks at a time as a minimum, where you go pre-camp plus your tournament, but then you have to sacrifice some of these things, especially in the last couple of years, being December and lead up to Christmas, and thankfully my wife buys all the Christmas presents, and I just need to focus on bringing the presents back for having the kids. But it's no, I mean, I think I kind of make almost just look at it as one job now. It's two teams, one job, and try and see how much of it can benefit each other, and hopefully make some sort of small help with these players in the country itself can become as successful as they can be, and we can entertain the people that support it and watch it.
That's great. Yeah. One final question before I leave you alone. Thank you so much for your time. Is with obviously achieving a silver medal for GB in the Under-20 World Championships is huge, and I think it demonstrates the talent that we have as a country in order to compete and things. Obviously, I suppose as a coach of the Under-20s, you have these players for I suppose a limited amount of time. Really, what do the players need to develop in the future after the point that you've had them and they move on? Like, what are the crucial things in terms of developing that talent pool in a competitive?
I think that the difficulty, first and foremost, when you coach that Great Britain national team, and I think it's the same at under-18s as it is at under-20s, and I know even for Pete at the men's team, it's similar challenges where. For us, the last 2 or 3 years, we've never actually had our full team together till you arrive at the airport, because people play all over the world, and obviously it's difficult to expect someone to pay hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds sometimes to come in for a one-day camp before the tournament. So we try and do as much in the summer where we see everybody. Then it's a lot of video on the UK or the overseas-based players. You see a bit more of the UK-based, and obviously speaking to coaches, etc. But like you say, the short time now. I mean, Ice Hockey UK have supported us with these pre-camps, so we'll go 3-4 days early. We'll condense everything into a short space of time to try and be ready. This year was one challenge game against Spain, and maybe 5 practices. So the players, to be fair to them, take on a lot of information. You've got to make them they know each other growing up, but you've got to make them a team for that 2 weeks. They're living in each other's pockets, so they've got to take on the systems, they've got to take on the structure, they've got to take on the rules, they've also got to take on the IIHF guidelines of a tournament. So it is difficult for them, and it's challenging as a coach. But we have, as you say, we have a lot of talent. We make it work. The players this year, I thought they were phenomenal. On the back of last year, it was behind closed doors, and we were in a lockdown in Romania. This year, then becomes crowds and a bit more flexibility. But I think that the thing for us is we try and say to them that they've got to create a memory. That team will then always be linked. A silver medal. We'll look at it 2 ways here. The silver medal, you've won a silver. I think through time we've learned to understand that winning a silver is a good achievement. At the time, if I'm honest, we were in a bit of a huff, if you can call it that, because barring 2 bad periods against Croatia, we felt we were the best team there. We were great against the other teams. We done our job. We lost focus on our penalty kill for a couple of periods that still sticks in our mind. That there's a disappointment of not getting gold, but once you come home and you understand that a silver medal, you can't be unhappy at that. You have to, and you've set a standard for these players now. What they need now is they need to play. Yeah. They can't sit on a bench. I don't think it's of any benefit to young guys to go and sit on a bench while some players may be playing 25 minutes a night and some guys are not playing at all. We know what one's going to develop. So it's finding the right place, whether it be at home, whether it be abroad. What we try and do, even when they leave us, is we still try and make them aware that they know they can speak to us for advice. I think that has to be important, that they need a support mechanism when they're making decisions of where do they sign. As there may be, especially abroad, there may be a college route or there may be a different league. And if they don't know, at least they can reach out to get help. They probably will. Everybody in their life, young or old, makes bad decisions at times. So if we can help these players make good decisions, if they can get in the UK, if they can get in, whether it be the National League or the Elite League, maybe ideally both. You look at guys like Jack Hopkins is one right now that's right up at the top end of the scale of ability. But that 2-way deal with Milton Keynes and Nottingham is getting the best of both worlds. We've got Kel Beattie here, obviously trains in Belfast every day, just won a Challenge Cup. But game time is here, and we added Hull into the mix a little bit when he was available. So it's important that they play to the highest level they can, not just sit on the bench. They learn the game. They have to take accountability for what they do away from the ice. They can't just stop and say, I'm a GB under-20 player. I've won a silver medal, or I've been at 2 World Championships. They have to continue to be hungry and push. And look at the role models. I mean, look at role models throughout the country. Guys like Jonathan Phillips, guys like Matthew Myers. They're playing 1,000 games. 1,100, I think, for Matty Myers just last week. Look at guys like Liam Kirk. I mean, Kirky came through our programme. He stood for us and for me I made Liam a captain of the GB team. He stood in front of us the year he signed his entry-level contract, but still spoke to the GB20s, telling them how he loved playing for Great Britain. So have that same dream that Liam had. Sam Duggan was another one that played in Sweden, and his career has now come back to UK, and he's a British assistant captain and as a young man in the Elite League with Cardiff. So look at the role models as well. Use these people to help them. But their aspiration should be to play hockey and and break into Peter's team. If Pete's going to be the men's coach, and I'm hoping that he'll be the men's coach for a long time, then that's the guy they've also got to impress, and you can't do it by sitting on the bench. So use the tools that are out there, use the leagues that are out there. It doesn't have to be that if you have to take a step back from maybe the elite to the national, because you're going to play in key situations, power plays, penalty kills, lots of minutes. Use it to your advantage, work hard, be a good person, and our sport will thrive, and these young players will thrive. And I've no doubt that the sport's trending in the right way. And, and even with people like yourself and these different podcasts that are out there and promoting our sport at every level, it's only going to go one way. It's going to be successful. And if everybody can play, whether you're a parent, a player, a spectator, coach, if we can all play a little part in making the game better, then the country's got every chance of success.
No, I completely agree. And Martin, I want to say thank you so much for giving up your time. I do really appreciate it, mate. And thank you so much for coming on.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, and keep up the good work.